it's been so important for me to learn from other leaders that I've worked with and for in the past and see what works and what doesn't. Adopt my own leadership style, to know that what has motivated me from my former leaders and mentors in life and in business, and and then figure out how to be a good psychologist along the way. Yeah. And really, you're right, because when you have employees, it's people. It's people. It comes down to people. It comes down to psychology. It comes down to putting the right people in place where they can be successful. And
especially if you're not making something like something physical, it's like you're just in the people business.
You're in the people business.
Just like sales to a degree.
Absolutely.
All right, welcome to the Matthews Mentality Podcast. I'm thrilled to have Josh Joseph, the founder and CEO of Big Plan Holdings, a Nashville-based diversified family holding company. As a serial entrepreneur, Josh leads his family's vision to incubate new business ventures and pursue strategic investments across a variety of industries, including real estate, cannabis, entertainment, and more. He co-founded Grassroots Cannabis, culminating in a successful exit for approximately $850 million. That's a lot. I might need to borrow some money later. All right. The family recently executed partnerships with Hank Williams Jr. and Jon Bon Jovi for bars and restaurants in Nashville. Additionally, Josh sits on several boards and founded a philanthropic wing, the Joseph Family Foundation. Welcome, Josh, to the podcast.
Kyle, thank you.
A local Nashvilleian.
Yes. Yeah.
2019?
2019.
Yeah.
Moved down from Chicago.
You got the memo, huh?
We got the memo.
Me too, 2019.
Yeah. Yes. It was great timing.
Talk to me about the timing. What brought you down?
We, professionally, I came down in 2004 for the first time from Chicago. Real estate brought me down here. Bank of America had hired me on an account.
Different town back then.
Yeah, way different town. So came down here, fell in love with, had some downtime, like on a normal work trip, went downtown, explored, fell in love with it, and called my wife from Broadway. And I was like, hey, we should, really come down here. And, we should come check this out.
What was Broadway like in 2004 compared to today?
Oh, night and day.
It was kind of like a rougher, like it was like a real honky tonk as opposed to the commercialized one.
Without question. Yeah. Real honky tonks, couple tattoo parlors, you still had the boot stores, more than what you have now, but way less bars and restaurants.
Yeah. And again, as I say, less commercialized, like it wasn't the co-branded things you see today.
Not at all. No, that started, I want to say in maybe around 2016, 2017 is when that started kicking off. No, this was, it was down and dirty, kind of old Nashvilleian, honky tonks, bars, restaurants, the tattoo parlors, the boot stores, the, kind of gimmicky shops. But it was great. Had a great vibe to it.
And so you started coming down, you fell in love, and then what ultimately caused you to pull the trigger and make a move in 2019?
We had targeted a number of different cities. My wife and I got married pretty young, had our two daughters pretty young. So we were...
Defined pretty young.
Married by 22, both daughters by 27.
Yeah, that's pretty young.
Yeah, pretty young.
Especially for today.
Yeah, especially for today. So we were, we were kind of off and running in terms of looking at the next chapter of our lives in terms of where we would plant our feet. And Nashville was similar to... we looked at Charleston a little bit. We looked at Austin a little bit. Yeah. We just landed here. So this was the spot for us.
Yeah. Austin, Austin and Charleston are wonderful, but I'm biased. I love Nashville.
Yeah. We kept just something gravitated us towards coming down here a bunch.
And what does a day look like for you today?
This is early for me to take to take a meeting. Yeah.
Are you are you a night owl?
No, man. No, I'm pretty disciplined and pretty regimented. But in terms of, I don't take a lot of meetings any longer. I don't. I'm pretty selective in terms of what I do day in and day out and who I'm with at this point. So trying to find that work-life balance. But waking up in the morning and I'll usually set no more than 2 meetings a day and 3 to 5 phone calls a day. and then just kind of do my
Well, I
thing.
appreciate you being here.
Absolutely,
I'm trying to get to your level then.
I don't know about that. No, you've got a beautiful thing going.
No, two meetings a day. I don't do meetings in the morning.
Nah, you've got to find that balance. Been doing it for years, man. 30 years.
Yeah,
So,
that's a long time.
Yeah.
So speaking of doing it, what are you doing today? Like, what keeps you busy?
Yeah, so we had fortunately a successful exit in cannabis in 2020, and I was never going to do what we're doing today ever, but due to the pandemic, I just started working all over again. So we created a family office in 2020, I would say. 2019 it started, but really 2020 is when it took off. We are involved in probably about a half dozen verticals at this point. Commercial real estate, which has been my bread and butter for 30 years, almost 30 years. I'm aging myself, man. But cannabis, very, very selective today, but we're still involved in the cannabis industry. Professional sports, we're the only money behind a Major League Baseball and NFL agency with a partner out in Los Angeles. I sit on the board of that company.
What company is that?
Milk and Honey Sports.
Milk and Honey.
Yeah, they're a big player in the music and entertainment space as well, and then branched out into professional sports, into the NFL and Major League Baseball. So we're in professional sports, cannabis, commercial real estate, music and entertainment at a pretty high level. We have a music publishing company. What else?
I guess you got to be in that industry if you're in Nashville.
Yeah,
right?
you do. You do. So we fell into that. So we've had a publishing company for over 5 years. We fund some high-end music and entertainment projects around the country, and we have a big project over in the Middle East we're involved with. We're in fashion, and then we have a family foundation as well.
That's a lot for a couple meetings a day.
It's a lot. Yeah.
You got to be pretty efficient then.
Planted a lot of seeds the last four years or so. When we came to town, it was not 2 or 3 meetings a day. It was really full speed, and so this year has been refining kind of what.
Well, I think you said you've been doing it 30 years, but you're 49.
Yeah,
yeah, that's still pretty young, especially in relation to the accomplishments. I got to ask, what are you doing for your 50th birthday party?
Heading to Buffalo Trace this Friday with 15 buddies from Chicago. So we're part of a little membership club up in Buffalo Trace. We're going to spend the weekend there and go up to Keeneland, and then in November head down to South Beach in Miami with my wife for a few days and go there. But yeah, pretty low key, man. Just got back from France and Italy for a couple weeks. So
speaking of South Beach, I'm going there in 2 days to check out Taylor Swift.
Oh, is that right?
With my 2 daughters.
Beautiful.
My wife.
Love that.
Yeah.
Yeah. Where's she playing? Playing at
whatever
the Dolphin Stadium.
Dolphin Stadium. I don't know. Listen, obviously I'm not the driver of this, but
love that.
I'm just going to show up, and even told my daughters they can pick my outfit. So I'm excited.
Love that. That should be a blast.
Yeah, not my first choice, but
how old are your girls?
11 and 7.
Love it.
Yeah.
It's the best.
You have two daughters.
Two girls, 25 and 22.
But was Taylor Swift a thing when they were growing up?
No. A little bit. Yeah, towards their
T-Swift.
T-Swift. Yeah, towards their teenage
Best entrepreneur of all time.
Unbelievable.
Yeah.
Unreal.
So, all right. So let's go back in time. You're from Chicago. Walk us through what it was like growing up for you. And I want to see if there's any moments or any threads we could pull on that in terms of like early inclinations, early moments that said, hey, this guy's going to be a really successful entrepreneur.
I came from a really humble upbringing. My mom, just family wise.
Dad was an accountant.
My dad was an accountant. I'm the oldest of 3 boys. So came from, all boys, male dominated household. My older cousins, first cousins, were all guys with the exception of one. And they were like my older siblings, and
just go out in the yard and beat each other.
Just absolutely, yeah. Probably similar to you would be my guess. Yeah, it was constant physical activity. My dad was an accountant, came from very little in Chicago, built up a nice accounting practice over the years, and my mom was a Chicago public school teacher for 30 years, 31, 32 years. Same school, never left the school that she started at. Double master's degree. and never made more than $58,000 a year. So in a rough and tumble neighborhood in Chicago. So yeah, we were as kind of boys growing up in the northwest suburbs of Chicago. We were kind of middle of the road.
Trying to recreate the '85 Bears defense.
Absolutely,
in the yard.
man, without question,
The
for
Bears.
sure. Yeah, absolutely. So that's where we came from.
And so growing up, was being an entrepreneur or, starting businesses, was that something was that like conversations you had with you and your brothers or?
No, really, he just kind of kept his head down. We were very, very close, remain very close to this day, but work-wise, there was never really a sit down of like, all right, boys, this is the path that I think I see you taking, or here's some advice on business or school. Education was, imprinted into us without question. How important it was.
Was that your dad, your mom, or both?
Both, but more our mom.
Yeah.
More kind of drilling down that go get a college degree. Our dad as well. That's one thing that no one can ever take away from you is a college education. I think that paradigm has shifted a little bit in today's generation.
Depending on your major, for sure.
Yeah. So I don't necessarily believe that as much as I did
agree.
Growing up.
Yeah.
But yeah, so he didn't have too much advice in terms of that. I think the entrepreneurial bug in me I've thought a lot about this over the years, is that I don't think you can teach that. I think that is, that's just innate.
Like hardwired?
Hardwired. Yeah, it's hardwired into, someone's DNA. I think you can coach it a little bit out of people, but I do believe it is, certainly hardwired. I'm sorry.
Go ahead.
Yeah, I look at my two brothers, and we kind of look at each other and who's got the entrepreneurial bug, who doesn't, who's more comfortable, living their lives with a paycheck every couple of weeks, not being a risk taker and betting on themselves, et cetera.
Yeah, and I have 4 kids too. I'm sure you agree. It's like certainly there's some nature, or sorry, some nurture, but a lot of it is just like my kids' personalities today are the same they've been since they were, effectively born, just hardwired in.
Yeah, without question.
And so you mentioned, did your dad start his own accounting firm?
Yeah, he was at an accounting firm and then left in the middle of the night back in the day with one junior accountant and a secretary at the time when he was 40. And I was 12, 13. And he had a little bit of a midlife crisis, at that moment in time. I think looking back on it, a lot of nerves and, family pressures, et cetera. And then turned the corner and, built up a practice, which, one of my brothers has taken over, the last several years at this point, but has about 60 or 70 people at this point that they've built up. So nice success story over the years.
I think a midlife crisis, if successful, can then be looked back and call it a midlife celebration.
There you go.
Right?
I like that.
That's why. Yeah, that's what I say.
that.
Like when I'm 42, when I hit 40, they're like, "Oh, you going through a midlife crisis?" I'm gonna call it a midlife celebration.
I like that. Yeah, I like that. I like that spin.
So, all right. So you're growing up. You got your 2 brothers. Education. How would you describe yourself as a student?
Not great. Smart, but not. Never applied myself. Yeah,
Not super disciplined.
Not super disciplined.
So what were you interested or passionate about at the time?
I was having fun, man. Yeah, I was having fun with my buddies.
What was fun like back in the day?
Riding your bike, riding your dirt bike, skateboarding. Playing football on the side yard, and street hockey with rollerblades and ice hockey in the winter coming from Chicago.
And your mom's a teacher. I mean, did she?
Oh, it wasn't good, man.
You just drove her crazy.
Drove her nuts.
Yeah.
Drove her nuts. Yeah, I was certainly the worst out of the 3 boys,
That's
without
funny.
question. Yeah,
Because interesting. A lot of times you said you're the oldest?
The oldest,
A lot of
yeah.
times the oldest is very put together.
Yeah,
no,
not this guy, man. Not this guy. Definitely, beats my own drummer.
Hey, your brother should thank you. You set a low bar.
Without question. Yeah, without question.
So high school, still, again, my words, average student. Were you playing sports?
Above average student. Took AP classes. Never applied myself. Sat down for an ACT. Scored really well, but grade wise. So yeah, it was. Played sports. Played football in high school. Played baseball and basketball growing up. Up until high school, and then
if we had asked your teachers back in the day, like, hey, Josh is going to go on and do all these things, what would they have said?
They would have, I think they would have seen that happening. Yeah, they would have seen a somewhat successful sales guy of some capacity.
And, normally I've had the opportunity now to sit down with really amazing people. And this question comes later in the interview, but for you, it's really quick. You met your wife in 7th grade?
7th grade, yeah. She was born in Detroit, in the Detroit, Michigan area. Moved to the Chicagoland area when she was 8 or 9, and then she moved into our school district.
So she was just significantly better looking than you,
without question.
And you held on for dear life.
For dear life.
Is she aware of this?
Oh, 100%.
Okay.
Yeah, 100%.
Because if not, I can let her know.
100%. Yeah, just past our 27-year anniversary.
Yeah, it's too late to turn back now.
It is way too late.
Ignorance is bliss.
How about it?
That's so cool. How do you remember how you met? Like, was it by the locker, or was it?
Not really the actual first meeting, but I remember when I fell in love with her.
Oh yeah,
yeah, without question.
Yeah, tell us.
It was 8th grade graduation, not the actual ceremony, but the school had a little party before the ceremony, and she walked in, and she was wearing a little white dress in 8th grade, and I was like, boom, I really dig this girl.
Creeping.
Yeah, totally creeping, man.
Yeah.
Right? Yeah.
I thought it might have been like, the 8th grade dances where like all the boys are on one side and all the girls on it. You probably went out there and did the worm or something.
Yeah. Break dancing, cardboard boxes.
Was it break dancing?
Of course, man.
Oh, good for you guys.
Yeah.
That's cool. And again, you don't have to get too personal. Did you stay together the whole time?
Whole time. Have not broken up.
Not even like a junior high breakup?
No, man. No, we split. Well, I guess we split up a little bit freshman year of freshman year of high school. We kind of went our own separate ways. Yeah. So yeah, there was a moment, there, but you're 14 years old, and then by fall of sophomore year of high school, we were back together. And
do you guys argue over whose decision it was to break up?
No, it was clearly, well, that's a different story, but yeah, as to why that took place. But,
you thought you could trade up, and you went out there and you're just like, oh,
I was like, I've got to come back.
That's cool.
Got to get back. So it was good.
All right. So your high school, you get a great ACT score.
Yep.
Did you say ACT?
ACT. Yeah.
And, where does that lead you for college?
I went to the University of Illinois.
Yeah.
I got in back in the day. You can get in the back door, so I got in through the College of Agriculture. So I was sitting in
game in the system.
Oh yeah, man.
Again, it's I had some buddies I went to high school with, and there was a school in California, Cal Poly, San Luis Obispo, good school, but they couldn't get in on so they get in through the College of Agriculture.
That's it.
This is it. So
College of Ag.
If you're listening and you want your kids to go to a good school,
College of Ag is where it's at.
College of Ag.
Yeah, you sit introduction
at a school
to forestry.
Not necessarily known. Well, maybe
a little bit.
Yeah, Cal Poly. Well, I guess there's huge agriculture in California.
Yeah.
I'm thinking like an ag school like Texas A&M or something.
Yeah. No, it was definitely game in the system.
And how long do you have to stay in the College of Ag before you get to?
Well, a normal student is 1 year. Yeah, my path was a little bit different, so my path took a little bit longer.
You're like Tommy Boy. You went to school for 7 years, but you're not a doctor.
I went for 2.5 years to Illinois, and then bounced out of there, and moved around to a couple different schools to finish up.
That's cool. So what was it? College, like similar story to when you were younger. You were just like, trying to, I don't want to say find yourself, is such a bullshit saying, like.
Yeah, no, for sure. That's what it was, Kyle. Yeah, it was, I never had a clear, looking back on it, there was never real discussion in the family household, as close as we were, as important as education was, as important as trying to, position yourself for your future and all of that. There was never really there were never sit downs of, okay, what interests you? What, where do you envision yourself landing? And I'm not blaming anyone, because at the end of the day, it falls on you. And I just didn't have that at that moment in time.
Do you think culturally that just wasn't part of the parenting bucket back then? Like for you to sit down, like, hey, like I want to have this conversation where we dive in and explore who you are. And
I do. I think there is a generational piece of that without question. I think parents today, I mean, I know Tara and I with our girls, I would say we're much more proactive in terms of, helping guide, where our girls wanted to maybe go, what interested them, what didn't.
I feel like our parents' generation, they weren't like the greatest generation where this was like a literal view,
Mm-hmm.
but they were more towards that, which is like, look, my responsibility is to provide you food,
Yep.
shelter, clothes, and education.
Mhm.
And then at 18, maybe I'll pay for your college.
Mhm.
That would have been the difference.
Right.
Good luck.
Yeah.
Like,
Yeah. They dropped me off in Champaign. I was 17 as a college freshman.
well, you're young for your grade.
Yeah. So my birthday's in November, and school started, around Labor Day or so.
Jeez.
So, you're a 17-year-old kid. You get
That
dropped
must have been
off.
tough growing up. You were always the youngest, which when you're like 11, that's like 10% of your life almost.
Yeah.
You know,
Yeah.
like-
Yeah. No. Yeah. Yeah. Definitely. And I should have learned. Our youngest daughter, she was like 3 weeks before the deadline,
Hmm.
and we kept pushing her in, or we pushed her in just to the normal cycle. And I should have learned to hold her back.
I think that created challenges.
Without question.
Yeah.
Yeah. Looking back on her, on her early education, and her
Especially
years.
early. And I
Yeah.
can't speak for girls, obviously, but from a boy's perspective, the sports and the physicality.
Oh, without question.
When you and I grew up, bullying and getting your ass kicked was like still a thing. I don't know if it's as big now.
Yeah.
But
Yeah. No, it was, man. Yeah, for sure. So they dropped me off at 17, and that was
looking
it.
back on your childhood as being probably the youngest in your grade, unless you were moved forward just because you were a genius, like,
Mhm.
did you think that helped create or foster an edge in you? Like kind of because you probably had to learn to compete through tenacity because just, again, physically and even mental
Mhm.
maturity, you
Mhm.
weren't at the top of that.
Yeah, without question. I think it was a combination of, being on the younger side of the grade, all the way through high school into college. At some point you catch up, but I do think there was part of that. And then there was just part of, again, just kind of
How you're wired.
Yeah. How I'm wired, little chip on the shoulder.
So
to
you
do it.
bounce around colleges.
Yeah.
What did you end up majoring in?
English literature and a French minor. So very employable.
The creative arts. Why did you choose those two?
I was always very strong in language and
Oh,
reading,
okay.
writing. Language came pretty easy to me. Writing was always, love writing. So love reading. So that was always, those things were always pretty easy and interesting. And and I think, again, looking back, if I would have focused a little bit more early on in my college career and gotten out of the College of Agriculture and gotten into the College of Business, and which was the plan, the path would have been a little bit different. But looking back on it, I wouldn't have changed anything.
Was that just because you weren't ready to, and again, this is just the word that like you weren't ready to grow up or mature, like really lock in and focus on discipline?
Without question. Yeah, without question. Even playing organized sports and playing them, at a high school that had real discipline from academics to athletics, et cetera. There was never, for whatever reason, I never grabbed onto that discipline that it really required to take it to the next level, for whatever reason, and just found myself, I wasn't a degenerate delinquent kid, but I was out there having fun and pushing the envelope, whether it be socially or academically, and kind of pushing it to the line a little bit, and give my parents a run for their money, as a teenager and through college, and and then the light bulb went off.
Well, that's what I was going to ask. Like, was there a moment where all of a sudden you just it was like a switch was flipped? Like, what happened where all of a sudden you're like, okay, no more of this, floating around. Like, I'm going to lock in.
Yeah, I locked in. I think, again, looking back on it, I locked in at a pretty young age. Being, we got married. Tara and I got married at 22. We had both of our daughters by I was 27, and when we had our first daughter, Sydney, that was it, man. Like, it was game on at that point. There was not one thing that was going to stop me from being successful. There was an absolute motivation of fear of failure, of fear of not being able to provide for my wife and daughter at that moment in time. And from that moment on, it was game on.
That's good. So you graduate college, you have English literature, you said?
Yeah.
And
Fascinating, right?
Minor. Normally, I feel like you'd become like a teacher.
So
Right? Is it like, I feel like those degrees, but you didn't. You went into real estate?
I did. Yeah. I fell into, I pursued for a minute education and went down the road as I was finishing up my degree. I went into the College of Education for a quick minute. But I then learned that also just did not connect with me. So graduated college and I was like, okay, what do I do? The only thing that dawned on me at that point was maybe law school, and so I went to, I have a cousin, he's still alive today. He's much older. He lives out in Malibu. Have a cousin. He was in Chicago.
I wish my cousins lived in Malibu.
Right? How about it, man? Yeah.
They live outside Houston.
Yeah.
It's just hot. I got a lot of cousins. You hear this? Like, can one of you get a spot in Malibu, please?
Yeah, in the boo, man.
Go ahead.
So I called him up, and he was a lawyer, practicing attorney, small practice in Chicago, and also owned a bunch of high-profile real estate as well that was in his family for years and years in 2 different neighborhoods in Chicago, in the city. And I said, his name is Ron. I said, Ronnie, can I come work for you on the law firm side? And gave me a job as a clerk, and went over there, worked there, and it was a small practice, small niche practice, or about a handful, 4, 5, 6 lawyers there. And I saw what they did every day.
And you said, hell no.
Yeah, hell no. I'm out.
How long were you there?
I worked for him for 18 months, but what wound up happening as I was there, brought into clerk, he ultimately moved from Chicago to Malibu at that time. He was going through a divorce, and he owned about maybe 8 properties in Chicago, and he was about to go put them all in the market and start monetizing them. And so he said, listen, I need you to be my eyes and ears here and be my real estate kind of maintenance, not physical maintenance guy, but run around the city and go grease the alderman and go deal with city violations and all that stuff.
Utility player.
Yeah. And so I fell in love with real estate at that point.
And so how do you get into real estate? You're at this, again, law firm, but you're kind of working on some real estate. Like, how do you actually transition as a career?
Yeah, I did some research, and at the time, you can get your sales license way back when. So I, signed up on, did an online course. Illinois had a sales license program. Did the salesperson's license program online. Had to then go work for a managing broker, sponsoring broker for a year at the time. You no longer have to do that in Illinois. And I did both of those things, and then positioned myself to leave that company. I was making $12 an hour, $14 an hour.
But you're a commercial real estate agent.
Yeah.
You're getting paid by the hour?
Well, with my
Sounds
cousin.
Sounds like a good gig. I would have loved $12 an hour.
How about it, right, man? Yeah. But it's, took my first job managing courtyard apartment buildings, which was brutal. And then my first real job, I landed at a company called Mid-America Real Estate.
Yeah.
In the
Is that the
Chicagoland area.
Mid-America that's still there to this day?
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah, they're a high level. I mean,
they're a powerhouse, without question.
I say boutique, but regional boutique, big. Yeah. I know some of the guys over there are really good at their job.
Yeah.
Hold on. So you started in commercial real estate, you got your license, but you started in property management?
I did. Yeah. I figured.
I have this idea.
What is that?
Can I share it? Because if somebody steals the idea,
hey, just copyright it, right?
I'm going to copyright this idea. I have an idea for a TV show for like HBO. It's called Property Management. And it's like the main character is like a property super who has a portfolio of 10, 15 apartment buildings. Because I own some apartment buildings, and like you talk to your property managers pretty frequently, and the stories they tell of
crazy,
insane, right?
Yeah, crazy.
It's
a great idea.
Collecting rent, like evictions, the things you walk in on.
Crazy, yeah, crazy.
How long did you do that job?
I was there about 9 months.
What was that you can share? What was the craziest?
Oh, it was brutal. Yeah, it was absolutely miserable. Yeah.
So Allison's fiance is like a script writer.
Yeah.
And I pitched her this idea last week.
Yeah. There's something to it, man, without question. Yeah.
All right. See that? We just made it happen.
Yeah.
But
what
was the
there's something
craziest
to it.
thing?
I can't remember one story in particular, but It was wild, man. It was just, I remember sitting in this office, which was, my boss was a smoker. So, he would just be puffing away on cigarettes in his office. And I'm like, what the hell's going on here? Like, what are we doing? And he had one main client. So the entire business revolved around this one guy, basically. We had a couple like one-off owners, but the entire company was stood up by one client. So I was smart enough at that point to realize that like if this dude like pulls his business, I'm out of a job.
You're out of a job.
Yeah, like real fast.
And I do want to differentiate. So there's commercial property management, which is shopping centers and office. That's totally different.
Completely different.
That is totally different.
A little more sophisticated.
More sophisticated. There's still it's definitely on the rougher side of commercial real estate, but managing multifamily assets is different.
Yeah, brutal. Absolutely brutal. I learned a little bit of the management side working for my cousin.
Yeah.
Then went to that was all commercial, mostly, office, little mixed use, stuff like that. There was a good story there though, when I had to, if you have a minute on that one.
Go for it.
So my cousin was was an absolute hard ass when it came. If you didn't pay rent as a tenant, you got a 5-day notice, man. Immediately, without question. There wasn't a day that missed. So one of our big tenants was, without question, part of the mob in Chicago, 100%. And he had an Italian restaurant and he had an Italian shoe store. And he was late on rent every month, like clockwork. So we had the 5-day notice prepared a month in advance. I had to go deliver the 5-day notices each month to him in person, him or his people. And so I pulled up one day, I forget what neighborhood in Chicago. It was like whatever the notice address was. And this is like before, I was like on my roller blades in Chicago and, bladed over there or whatever, and pulled up there and handed them this. And a couple of guys looked at me. I was this like 21-year-old punk with a ponytail at the time.
Oh,
and
hell
this,
yeah.
oh yeah. They looked at me and they were like, all
Do
right.
we have any photos of that?
Right. They were like young man, basically like, you need to move on and get out of here. So the next month, so I handed it to them and I darted out of there. Next month it happened again. They were late. And so I tore up the 5-day notice and I threw it away. And I told my cousin that I had delivered the 5-day notice. And he got word very quickly that the 5-day notice was not delivered because he found the torn up I wasn't smart enough to actually throw it away in like a public trash can. And it was like in the office. And he reamed me out, man.
Oh, I bet.
Oh, like no other. But I was so petrified for my physical well-being, like no joke, no.
Yeah, you had two bad choices
without question. Yeah, so that was a good one on the management side. Yeah, but
I'd almost say like, man, like my gut tells me I would actually go to the mob place first and say, hey, let me take your check. I'll make it easy for you. I'll come 3 days early every month. Just hand it to me. Because that actually is a better position than to show up.
There's no
5
question.
days later.
There's no question. Yeah. And then the check always bounced every month, man. Yeah. So it was a nasty one, but yeah, landed in Mid-America on their property management side.
Yep.
So I started off managing shopping centers and did that for just about a year before I moved on to investment sales.
So all right. So you switched to investment sales.
Yeah.
What was that like?
That was great, man. I was managing a shopping center in Rockford, Illinois, State Street Shopping Center for a client. And one of the investment sale brokers got hired or the investment sales group at that time got hired to sell the shopping center. So in Mid-America, went from the property management company oftentimes over to the investment sales group.
What year was this roughly?
This was probably in 90, probably around 99 or so.
Okay.
Yeah, late 90s.
All right. And so you're in the property management.
Yep. And met this great investment sales broker on the other side of the office. I'd only seen him,
what was his name?
Rick Droges.
Oh,
Droges. Droges, one of my mentors in the business.
Yeah, I've had dinner with him.
You are? You are?
I've had dinner,
you've had dinner with him? Yeah. Droges, one of the good ones. And so we met, and I was the property manager. We hit it off during the sale process, and we were poking around a little bit, and I was like, hey man, if you're ever looking to hire an analyst, let me know. So we did that and put that together and moved over.
So you spent a couple of years on the analyst side, kind of learning the ins and outs of the product.
Yeah.
What'd you focus on?
It was all underwriting of putting together offering memorandums.
Was it, sorry, retail?
Yeah.
office-
I'm sorry. All retail. Yeah. 100%
Okay.
retail. Yeah. Shopping centers.
Okay. So then how long were you a commercial real estate investment sales broker?
For about 4 years at Mid-America. Before I made my next jump
Where was that to?
I went to a company called Hilco Real Estate.
Okay.
Shifted into a new territory, a new world for me, which was all bankruptcy and distressed asset workouts, liquidations around the country.
Were you being hired by the lenders or?
We would, I'm not sure if you're familiar with the Hilco companies or not, maybe a little bit.
I know the name.
Yeah, the name. So, the largest, bankruptcy distressed workout company in the world, not just the country, but based in the Chicagoland area. And we would either get hired by debtors when they would file for a restructuring, or we would get hired by the creditors or, so the banks, et cetera.
What prompted your shift from brokerage to Hilco?
I was able to negotiate at the time. I was on a very good trajectory at Mid-America. I was commuting a lot, and our first daughter was born. And I was about to have to go off of a base salary plus commission structure. And I got a call out of nowhere from one of my former partners for many, many years at that time, who had just started Hilco Real Estate. And I negotiated a deal for 2 years of a base salary of a certain amount of money, plus some upside that allowed me the comfort to...
So like stability.
Little stability. There you go.
Continuity.
Yep. Little stability.
Yeah, that investment sales life can get a little hairy
Yeah.
sometimes.
Yeah, little stability.
And what year was this? 2001?
Yeah, I started at Hilco 2 weeks after 9/11, so September of 2001.
And what you spent about a decade there? What'd you work on?
I worked on everything, man. I became agnostic in terms of real estate. So I've had the very good fortune in real estate to touch in my career at this point virtually every asset class. I've either bought, sold, repositioned, worked out, valued, transacted at Hilco probably, in 40, 45 states, most states, multiple times over. So, and
that
again,
probably really helped when you became a principal.
Yeah, without question. Yeah. So I ultimately, so some of the early on big accounts that I was able to work on, Jacobson's department stores, based out of Jackson, Michigan. They had a footprint in Michigan, Ohio, and Florida. They went through an 11. The big one that put us on the map at Hilco was MCI WorldCom. We were retained as the exclusive advisor in their Chapter 11 restructuring. So I was overseeing at that point at a pretty young age as a broker, a team of we partnered with NAI, the NAI network.
Yeah.
They were a strategic partner of ours for many years on big portfolio deals. So I probably had... I ran our own property brokerage division at a young age at Hilco. I was able to kind of catapult myself up there pretty quickly.
Would you do it all in-house, or would you partner with third parties?
Well, we would partner with NAI, for example, on a deal like that. So I would have I'd probably have 40 or 50 local broker partners on an account like MCI WorldCom at any point in time. So yeah, that was the big one for us that really put us on the map in about 2003 or so.
Now you were there till 2010. What happened? I mean, obviously GFC, but what happened in 2010, and what made the shift to ultimately co-founding your own firm, Frontline?
We at Hilco, we had sold a minority position of all the Hilco companies to Goldman Sachs and Cerberus in around 2006, 2007. Became a little more corporate. The writing was kind of on the wall in terms of we went from a company of, when we started Hilco Real Estate, 4 or 5 of us, to now like Wall Street owned and backed or partially owned and backed by Goldman and Cerberus. And it just started changing. Leadership started changing at the top. I was a partner on both the brokerage side of the business as well as the principal acquisition side of our business at Hilco. I ran both of those groups. And then in 2008, 2009, every morning I woke up, man, I just didn't like it. And then if you recall back in 2008, 2009, the recession that took place and the hit in commercial real estate was massive. Absolutely massive. But I was at a very good place.
I was going to say, you're at the place that actually the service is needed.
The services were needed. No deals were getting done, though. Even though we were bankruptcy and distressed oriented, there were really no transactions getting done. However, I was very fortunate, as you can appreciate. I had a very nice base salary, not a draw. So Hilco was a place that you had a really nice base. And so I knew no matter what happened in 8, 9, 10, or certainly in 8 and 9 while I was there, that I can make between A and B, even if I just transacted on a handful of deals, and between A and B would have been just fine. And at that moment, if you recall, people were jumping off of buildings. I mean, it was brutal.
Two little girls.
Two little girls, yeah. So, but it was still miserable. I hated it every day, man.
And that was because of the culture?
Yeah, the culture. There was a lot of infighting amongst senior leadership and my partners at the time, and there was a little insurrection that took place, and and so the guy who hired me and I became partners with was kicked out as the president and CEO of Hilco Real Estate, and so he was kind of put on his own island, and and then we started talking, and fast forward to the top of 2010, I took one of my junior guys with me from Hilco. And we partnered with the guy who had formerly hired me, and I became
so talk to us about Frontline.
Frontline was formed, just the three of us, man. We took our relationships with us and a couple of deals on an exit from Hilco, just in terms of horse trading and some negotiation at that point. It was a very difficult place to extract yourself from. Hilco is, or was. I don't know if it still is. I'm sure it is, but back then it was very difficult. But we took a couple of projects with us, and Frontline was formed by three of us sitting around, no joke, a table like this. And today, fast forward, I still own a share of Frontline. My two former partners that founded it with me are out of that business, but there's another guy in there that I'm partners with that runs it day in and day out, but we're up to about 25 or 30 employees.
Wow.
And it's a full service commercial real estate firm that is focused in, a lot of court appointed, a lot of distressed workouts, as well as healthy company leasing and sales and property management.
Interesting. And do you guys invest in deals as well, or?
Well, we did. So when we started Frontline, the real focus was to put 1 to 3 to 4 deals a year on the board, and then have kind of the brokerage service side of our business, just kind of pay the bills.
The fee
fee business, pay the bills, and we did that. So while we were rocking and rolling at Frontline, before we all kind of broke up and disbanded, if you will. We probably put about 40 deals as principals on the board over, a 5-6 year run.
What, did you guys start with your own capital? Did you bring in like a capital investor in the business?
We would put in our own money in every deal, but then we would go, kind of country club it out and syndicate the deals,
so
do a
just
GPLP
like
structure.
Institutional.
No, have never done that.
So you each, as the deal would come in, you'd then go and, like you said, country club and friends and family, just go syndicate it out.
Yeah. We'd start out as, a lot of stories as you've heard of, 50s and hundreds. And
well, part of the reason I'm asking is it sounds like for a majority of your career up to that point, you were driven by safety, security, because you mentioned base salary multiple times, and you had 2 little kids, and a lot of the drivers you spoke about that changed you from that younger version of yourself, which kind of, again, my words, floating, right?
Yeah.
Just trying to figure it out to like, okay, it's time to lock in.
Yeah.
But when you start your own company, I assume not much base salary, not much guarantee.
Zippo.
Okay.
Yeah, Zippo.
So,
I called my dad before I left Hilco, and my dad I shared with you a little while ago, he left when he was 40. I was 34 at the time.
you were having your midlife celebration.
I was having my midlife celebration. And I called him up, and he knew that I was in conversations about leaving Hilco and all of that. And right before I signed the paperwork, for the new company to be formed, he said, I asked him, I said, "Hey, Dad, what would you have done differently looking back?" And one thing he said to me that resonated is still to this day. He's like, "I would have done it 5 years earlier." It's like, boom, done. So we hung up the phone. I put it to bed. We signed up the deal, and but there was no base salary, and it was purely at that moment. I think I became, looking back on it, I was comfortable enough in my own skin and with my relationships and with my 2 partners at the time, who I'd been in the trenches with for many years, in some pretty, good times, bad times, whatever it might be, that we had this vision that we were going to be able to go execute on this thing. And this was at the top of 2010. So the commercial real estate
Yeah, it was in a
market
bad
still was an
spot.
absolute disaster. My wife didn't really talk to me. No
Well, that's what
joke.
I was going to
Yeah.
ask. Like, what did your wife think about it? I mean, I assume you had these conversations with her.
Yeah.
And again, such a driver for the longest period of time was that safety and the security and not disrupting your lifestyle. Like, what was her opinion on this?
Completely against it, but understood. She knew I was miserable going in every day. So from that standpoint,
Was she like, go find another place to do what you're doing where there's
No.
a salary?
No. She was just like, I mean, what you should like, just kind of stay. Yeah, things are good.
Deal with it?
Deal with it, kind of. But she also understood. She did understand that I was not happy every day going to work. But she also didn't understand for the first couple of years when you go start your own business, that you're gonna just grind. I was grinding at Hilco, but this was now a different grind. This was
It was different.
this was 7 days a week. This was
Yeah.
I don't have to tell you. And and this was pouring money into the company and into investments that weren't flipping overnight. You go buy a real estate asset, you're going to reposition it, and you're going to wait a year or 2 or 3
And I
years.
assume your LPs wanted to see you guys put money in the deal.
Without question.
Yeah.
Yeah, we
Like
would always
5-10%.
we would always put in usually 10 to 20%
Yeah.
of the equity, and then sign on. If there was
It's not like
requisite
you
debt.
wouldn't go raise that, right? As a co-GP.
Correct. We did not have co-GPs typically. Yeah.
So let me push pause. You mentioned about the grind. What was your life like? Early in your kind of commercial real estate career. Was there a work-life balance as the way it's kind of described today to young people?
Not much of one.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean,
Do you think that's a generational shift or culture, or was that just because you were driven in a way? You're like, hey, I want to be great at what I do, and that requires long hours.
I think there's a little bit of both to that. I think that certainly there's been I sound like an old guy, man, but I think
Not yet. Couple of weeks.
A couple of weeks, man. I think looking at today's generation, I don't want to generalize, but so many folks that we come across in today's generation, I don't see the same drive and work ethic that maybe I had and some of my colleagues had at the time.
How much do you think that has to do with boomers having whatever it is? This may sound dumb, like 70 trillion of wealth that's going to pass to these kids, and they know it.
A tremendous amount. Yeah, tremendous amount.
Like if like if the average boomer couple is has a net worth of $5 million,
Yeah,
and you're one of 3 kids, and you're going to get conservatively $1.5 million,
kind of hanging out a little bit. Yeah, I think
again, it doesn't take away everything, but it mutes things.
it mutes things. Yeah, I think there's a lot.
That's my theory.
I think there's a lot to be said for that.
And I do think and I want to get your opinion on this. I think we're in the middle of the greatest. It's like a hidden greatest wealth transfer in human history, where the wealth is being transferred before. A traditional way was, someone passed away and you get this, right?
Sure.
And I think it's being transferred every day by way of, you have 34-year-olds with jobs where the parents are still paying rent. They pay off their credit card. What was the hardest thing for you and I to do is get that first down payment for a house.
No question.
I can tell you a majority of people I know, the down payment of the first home was paid by their parents, not mine.
Mm-hmm.
And so all of these things are just happening every day. And it's like, it takes away the motivation.
It does.
To a degree.
It does. Yeah.
Right?
Yeah. Without question.
You didn't have those opportunities.
Did not have those opportunities. Yeah. No, when Tara and I bought our first condo, we put 3% down, and she was given, very fortunately, a little bit of stock from her grandparents on one side of her family that I had always heard about the stock that she was going to get, and looking back, it was $17,000 that we were able to cash out, man.
There's a stock in some company called Google. I don't know. They sold it. It was a weird sounding name.
It was all the bells, actually, all the phone companies.
Oh, okay.
So we were able to put down 3% to buy our first condo, but yeah, I don't know. Today's, it's a little bit different today. And one of the things that we've really tried to instill with our daughters early on, even though, we were very fortunate to have, our family a nice exit in the cannabis industry.
Mhm.
Our girls did not grow up like that. They grew up in the car with us 3, 4, 5 times a year, going down to the south side, the west side of Chicago for them to understand that where they were growing up, where they were being brought up in the suburbs of Chicago, where
On
kids
the
were
north side.
on the north side,
Yeah.
where kids were going to
Different.
school, in high school with BMWs and Lexuses and whatever it might be. Not all kids, but a lot. And designer bags and all that kind of stuff that is not life. That's not the world. So, but there certainly is a shift going on.
So
today.
you touched on the cannabis thing. How
Yeah.
in the world does a commercial real estate guy, pretty much most of your life, end up in the cannabis business in 2014? Like, walk us through how that all came about.
Frontline Real Estate Partners was about 3 or 4 years in at that point. And one of my 2 former partners was tracking this cannabis thing in Illinois. That was kind
By
of
tracking, he was like smoking weed in the parking lot.
yeah, right, exactly. And he's
He's like, dude, you don't understand. It's gonna be the biggest thing ever.
The biggest thing ever. He was tracking what was going on legislation wise, and we had this governor that just took office. We had Blagojevich, who got convicted, went to prison. This new governor came in, Governor Pat Quinn.
Come on, Chicago politics.
Oh man,
is
it's
like,
the best.
That's a Tuesday.
Without question, it's
Yeah.
the best, man. And he kept coming back to us every month. My other partner, myself, and he was like, "Hey, we should really do this." He's like, "I have a couple buddies. I had a partner who was older than me, and I had a partner who was younger than me. So this is my younger partner. At the time, and I was the most against going for it because my older partner had already had a couple liquidity events.
Mhm.
I was kind of the dude who was, I don't want to say running Frontline, but I had to make Frontline work. If Frontline didn't work in my mind, like I didn't know what we were going to do. So I was like, we're now in a good spot. We're up to, 12 people, 15 people. We're buying deals,
Mhm.
we're turning deals, we're, making some good money. The business is rolling. Let's not take our eye off the ball. To his credit, we did it and we applied, and we were very fortunate to get our foot in the door in Illinois.
So you go from 2014 to 2019, where you have what was it, 870 million? Did I get that number right?
Yeah, it's somewhere around there.
But
Yeah.
That's really quick. I assume in this case you raised capital or something, because like, how do you scale a business
Yeah,
that fast?
yeah, we did. We caught lightning in a bottle. I mean, quite frankly, and so we started a company. We won some licenses in Illinois. The 3 of us. We won 3 of our 5 medical retail licenses. We self-funded those. We brought in 4 or 5 of our real
Is
estate
a
investor
medical
buddies.
retail license, is that just like, hey, there's only one and you all bid for it, or it's like they can approve as many as they want?
Every state is different.
Okay.
So every state comes out with their own rules and regs, rules and regulations. And Illinois is screwed up as Illinois is in so many ways. They actually were one of the better crafted cannabis programs looking back on it. So it was purely a merit-based program. It was not a lottery.
Come on, it's Chicago. It's nothing.
No,
like
man.
Merit.
And-
It's like how much money you give them.
Which is also, Kyle, why I was against and opposed us going into it. I was like, listen, guys, like we know a lot of people, but
Yeah.
we're not going to go grease anybody.
Yeah.
We're not going to do that. Like that's not our.
They
our
probably
DNA.
figured out now that they should have been doing it, and now they're doing it.
Oh, without question. Without question, it came out
Yeah.
after. People were doing it afterwards. But yeah, man. So we went from Illinois. Just give you a quick little story.
Yeah.
But from Illinois, from 1 state to 12 states, from 4 of us, we partnered up with one other guy in Illinois who had won 4 licenses. So out of the gate, we had 7 of the first 50
Wow.
medical retail licenses in Illinois, which was at that time the 5th most populous state in the country. And so we had the largest market share by far.
Jeez.
And Illinois was the 11th state. So they were an early mover in the cannabis industry back in 2014 and 2015. And so the 4 of us went from one state and 4 of us to 12 states and about 1,200 employees
That's awesome.
in 5.5 years. But yeah, we raised some money. We raised a lot of money, but early on it was from friends and family. A lot of our real estate investors from over the years, we were calling them and we'd go get
because institutional capital wasn't going in that space at the time.
Absolutely. Yeah. And still really technically can't today, but
yeah, just because it's federally still illegal for now.
Yeah. For now. Yeah.
So man, credit to that junior partner with that idea.
Great idea, man. Great idea. And
probably had it hit him right after like a big bong rip, like,
how about,
and it was like, I got this idea.
At a fish show
this one day. Trust me. And you're like, what are you talking about, bro?
He's like, listen, man. He's like, we got to do this without question. And so we leaned in heavy.
You said this real estate thing. This for the birds, man.
Well, you know what?
It's too slow.
But real estate, real estate in the cannabis business, we had a massive advantage.
I was going to say they're
massive advantage over virtually every one of our competitors around the country.
Because of your real estate experience and prowess.
Without question. Because one of the biggest things you have to do in that industry is to go find a site that qualifies under state law as well as local municipal law. And when you're a real estate professional and you've been doing it for a long time and you have contacts around the country.
Pretty efficient.
And you know how to, all the nuances between striking a lease agreement to grab control of a space or a contract to grab control of a property and minimize your out-of-pocket risk and all of that. It created a massive advantage for us.
So you're still running Frontline, and you're going from 20 properties to 40 roughly, and now you have this again like connected but truly separate business,
completely separate business.
Yeah, the cannabis. What was your day to day? I mean, you had to been burning the candle at both ends, right? I mean, that's a lot to manage and deal with.
Dude, it was out of control.
Is that why you do 2 meetings a day now?
2-3 meetings a day, man.
Yeah.
That's it. And my circle is
got like PTSD from
a little bit, man.
Yeah.
Like no joke. There were days where I'd come home and we're a very social family, a lot of friends, very fortunate to have a lot of very, very good friends and who are like family, but it became cannabis was so hot, and our story was before we sold, but as we were scaling, people kind of knew what was going on. They were like tracking us. I didn't talk too much about it with our close family and friends, but
it was still stigmatized at the time.
Without question. Yeah. No, it was certainly still stigmatized, but it was
Probably
also
had some neighbors like, you're dealing drugs.
Oh, there's no question, man. Yeah. We had to sit down with our girls and talk to them about, hey, daddy's in this industry, you're going to probably hear about it a little bit because the business is getting a little bit bigger.
We can sell it, but we can't smoke it. Isn't that like you don't do your own shit as a dealer or something?
Right, exactly.
All right.
Yeah. So it was crazy, man. It was pretty wild. But it came to a point where I did not want to leave the house, come home from work. And every time we would go out, every single time, you'd be hit up. Hey, I've got a couple of questions for you, or hey, my aunt really would love a job. She's trying to crack into the industry. My buddy has this investment opportunity. So it never stopped, man.
They could smell the money.
Oh yeah. Well, it was that. And there was this intrigue that was building from 2015, 16, 17, about like this sexy, kind of weird industry that was blossoming around the country. And
all you ever hear, like in a way I'll equate it to like a Bitcoin. It's like something that's new that a lot of people don't understand. It's like all you ever hear is the success stories. Nobody ever shows up and is like, dude, I lost so much money in the cannabis business.
Yeah.
Even though there probably were a lot that happened. What you hear about is like yourself, the stories of people who are on a heater who are like doing really well.
Yeah. The amount, Kyle, we remain today, our sale remains today the largest sale in cannabis history. And I am extraordinarily grateful for, the vision we all had at that time, the work we all put in, the fights we all had. It got messy at the end. It was messy throughout. It got messy at the end, but it was also to your point, the amount of people that have gotten burned in the industry and the carnage that is out there today in that industry. And
your perspective now, you're like, wow, we got
we
fortunate.
Oh man, like without question. I mean, right place, right time. But it took me a minute to really come to terms with this because there was always also a little bit of guilt, like, and I don't know where that comes from, but like a little bit of guilt of like, hey, why me? Like,
Yeah.
why the good fortune of being able to,
They call that maybe this is a little higher, but billionaire guilt. It's like
just like what put us in that position. But I've reconciled that over the last few years, which is people oftentimes only see the headlines. They don't
they
see,
didn't see the grind.
dude, like no joke, man.
Well, that's what I was
7
asking.
days
Like,
a week,
because
bro.
yeah, 7 days a week. You
7 days a week, 18, no exaggeration,
So-
15-hour days,
but-
18-hour days.
What I want to ask about is you had 2 girls still at the house.
Yeah.
So that
Yeah.
was that tough? Like, do you feel
Yeah.
like you missed part of their childhood, just like working so much?
It was, I left a lot of money on the table when I was at Hilco, when our girls were growing up, because I put a foot in the sand, even though I was very fortunate to do very well at Hilco. I left a lot of money on the table because I needed to make sure that I was at parent-teacher conferences. I was at a dance recital. I would drive them to school most every morning. That was my time with them. I wanted, if I had to do a trip for business and I could do a 6 a.m. flight out to DC and then be back at home, in time for bedtime for them and then be up the next morning with them, I would do that all day long. So, and then that was early on at Hilco. And then when we were in the cannabis business, the girls were a little bit older and, certainly at that point, and I didn't miss too much, man. I mean, there were certainly some things I had to miss, but I was around. I look back on it. We've talked a lot about it as a family. I mean, I was a pretty present dad. And
So
husband
you're
for the most
present
part.
dad, but you're working your butt off.
Yeah.
I've had this question too. And my answer, I want to hear what your thoughts are, but also hear yours is like, well, yeah, you can be a present father and a crazy worker. It just doesn't leave a lot of time for anything else, like hobbies and golf and everything else. Like, was that your experience?
Yeah. The gym was my getaway for probably a nice 5 or 6 year run. Training for back in the day, those the mud races, the
mud runs,
the mud runs, doing stuff like that a bunch. So the gym was kind of my getaway in the morning, and I had kind of my gym crew for a 5 or 6 year run, same crew every morning. Hobby wise, didn't have any time. I don't golf. It's not my thing. So it's really, there was not much time for anything else. We did a couple trips here and there, but
no Sunday fun days.
no Sunday fun days, man. It was a lot of work.
You didn't know Bears games every night?
Every once in a while,
Sneak one in.
Yeah, sneak one in.
All right. So what was it like? And I got to condense the story down because I'm sure it could take a whole episode, but like, you guys come to this conclusion, hey, we're going to sell, or was it just some offer out of nowhere? Like,
we had 3 options at that time. We remained stealth in the industry until about 2017, for the first 3 years or so, maybe 4 years, probably 3 years. We raised, so in total, you had asked about the raise. We raised $180 million of private capital to scale our business, almost on the nose.
and do you put debt on top of that or no?
No, well, we did. Our second raise was a convertible debt round.
Okay.
So the first 90 was all equity. And then when we closed out our second real raise, or our first real formal raise, we went out to go raise $45 million in a convertible debt round. And that was at a moment in time in cannabis when the hedge fund guys would fly in on their private jets to Chicago. They would interview us and they would interview our 4 other competitors in Chicago for 2 days. Then they'd fly back to New York, and in like 2 or 3 days, you'd get word, hey, we're in for $5 million, we're in for $10 million. So the 45 that we went out to raise pushed up to 90. We were then on the map at that point. And all of a sudden, people kind of knew who we were. Fast forward a couple of years later, we were so big, you only really had 3 options. We could have remained private and continued to raise outside money and scale, and the 4 of us running the business, along with other C-suite folks that we brought in, et cetera. which we were not equipped to. Any of us were not equipped to run the company at that moment. We knew it. 3 of the 4 of us knew it. One of my former partners thought he could run it. Probably still does to this day, but it was above all of our pay grade at that point. We could have gone public up in Canada, or we could have sold. But we were so big that there weren't many companies out there in cannabis that could buy
I was gonna
us.
say, that's a chunky sale.
It's a chunky sale, and you have to deal with all the regulatory hurdles that come with that. There are caps on licenses in virtually every one of these states. So when we got to a size like that, we were competing with all the big boys and girls out there, and there were only about, at that moment, maybe 5, 6, 7 of us, and it's really still the same 5, 6, 7 today, but they just took us off the table. So all of those big groups, all those big companies out there, they were already in most of our states, if that makes sense. They were in Illinois, Pennsylvania, Maryland, North Dakota. We were all going after the same states. So there was really only one taker at the end, and that was Curaleaf, who came in, and we were a very accretive, bolt on for them.
And so how does a deal like that get structured? Is it cash up front? Is there earn out? Like how do they come in and ultimately, what was the structure of the transaction?
Yeah, we because of the illiquidity in the market, it was mostly a stock deal. They were they were on the public exchange up in Canada. So it was some cash up front without question, and then stock and Curaleaf. So you had to get comfortable, of course, with the paper that you were about to carry, and all of your investors were about to carry.
And so you don't have to be specific, but roughly,
Sure.
You and your partners, what percentage of the company did you own when you sold?
20+%.
And so
25%.
Again, I'm not.
And then we own some real estate separate and aside from the company.
But here's where I'm leading is, what is it like when you get the call and, your attorney or maybe one of your partners like, hey, the deal closed.
Yeah.
And again, with stock, it's not as simple as like you get wired, but
right.
What was the feeling that went through your head as someone who, again, this is kind of what I pieced together. You were financially conscious, right? I always have financial anxiety of like, hey, I need a base salary to make sure I can provide for my daughters. And yes, you did end up eventually pursuing the entrepreneurial route, but you did it because you had a high degree of confidence because you knew within that space that you guys were going to be successful. To this moment that, barring really bad spending habits, you probably would never need to work again in that sense. Like, what was that moment like?
So we knew it was going to close, but then waking up that morning, we were here in Nashville, actually, my wife and I. It was July 23rd of 2020 when the announcement was made and the deal closed. And we woke up, didn't sleep much the night before, checking the phone for, the press releases to come out and all that kind of stuff of the closing. I think the closing took place like the day before, but the announcement was made the day of, the day after. And our girls were both at college at that time. They were both away at school. So we, I remember just looking at Tara and, and she, there was a line that I gave. She said to me something and I gave her a line back, and it was it was pretty emotional, man. Yeah. Not gonna lie. It was it was a moment where I knew that no matter what, our girls were gonna be able to be taken care of. And our parents, if they ever needed anything, would be able to be taken care of. And like, that was life-changing. And it was it was pretty cool. It also came at a time where there was about to be litigation between myself and my former partners. So it was a very bittersweet, for me, it was an extremely bittersweet day from that standpoint. On one hand, you had this massive piece of success that hit, and your family is now good to go and you're locked in, to your point of, as long as you don't, piss it away and, all of that. And on the other hand, it was like, what just happened? Why after all these years of being with certain guys in the trenches who are like family, which we haven't dove into at all. That's a whole different topic, but genuinely, one of them was like my brother, is my middle brother's best friend still to this day from childhood. So he grew up in my house, and I brought him into real estate and then, all of that kind of stuff. But there was like this mourning process. There was this anger, this mourning, all of this kind of stuff. So
because you knew a lawsuit was coming.
Yeah. Me initiating that. Yeah, me initiating litigation.
What?
So
I don't know how much you got. What was the driver of that?
There were certain things that were done. We were growing so fast in the cannabis company, and I was running Frontline day in and day out, but also working pretty much full time at the cannabis on the cannabis side as well. I really had 2 full-time jobs, and you couldn't keep up with everything that was happening in 5.5 years. Going, man, right from literally from 4 people to 1,200 employees. You couldn't keep up with everything. So as we were selling, we were under agreement to sell our cannabis company in July of 19. So it took 12 months to get through all the regulatory hurdles. It wasn't like a sign and close thing. So there were a lot of things that were coming out as you have to go disclose to the public marketplace of a pending sale to all the state regulators. So there were things that kept coming out for that year from 2019 to 2020 that I would see, and I'd be like
skimming money or something like that.
Not skimming money, but like just different deal structures. It wasn't things that weren't pursuant to our agreement, and it was very black and white. I mean, it was as black and white as can be. I could have held up the sale from our company to Curaleaf, but certainly was not going to do that. Knowing that I would just have to deal with some stuff for the next 12 to 18 months following following the closing of the deal. So the morning of, man, it was great.
How much of the positive feeling was relief about your daughter's, financially being taken care of, your parents if they need to be, and how much of it was like affirmation of your own personal value as a provider and as a professional? Yeah,
great question. There was absolutely a piece of that. It was kind of like a final stamp of approval, like, hey, here we go. There's been a chip on. I grew up and always have had a little bit of a chip on my shoulder, for the good and the bad, for whatever reason. And there was this affirmation, confirmation that like, boom, finally we did this thing. We pulled it off. And I never knew where life was going to take me in terms of that piece of it, without question. But there was certainly confirmation.
There's so many, so many people that entrepreneurs and successful people are, billionaires like Jeff Bezos or whatever. And oftentimes their driver is like some woman scorned them, but you didn't have that.
No, man.
Did you ever look at Tara as like, aren't you glad you married down? Right?
All the time. Of course. Yeah. Especially when she's yelling at me about not putting the laundry away, right? Yeah. Or taking the dishes out.
That's right. You're like, hey, I'm not as bad as you say. Okay.
Absolutely.
I do have one win on the board.
Yeah, absolutely.
Good for you. So that's cool. And then, so you had that litigation, you worked through that.
Yeah.
And so this is 2019?
2020.
Oh, sorry. January 2020.
Yeah. July of 2020, we closed.
Did you kind of, outside of the litigation, there's no checking out of litigation, but like, did you take a year or 2 off of being like a hardcore entrepreneur, or did you immediately turn your attention to something else?
Turn the spigot right back on. COVID.
Why do you think you're like that? Like you have to stay busy.
Well, the pandemic hit. So the pandemic hit.
It didn't hit Nashville. I don't know if you're aware of that. Chicago, yeah, for sure.
Chicago,
LA?
Sure. Chicago it hit. LA it hit.
Nashville is called a seasonal cold.
It was a seasonal cold.
No, not to make light. It was crazy, but
it was a wild time. The plan for Tara and I at that time was to, I was pretty burnt out, man. So it was to really go off the grid and go over to Europe, go to Italy, camp out over there for about 6 months.
But you could use your French minor.
Right. How about it, man? Would have been in Paris. Oui, monsieur.
But you couldn't do it?
Couldn't do it. Couldn't travel, man. So I found a property in Nashville over a breakfast meeting, not looking for anything at all.
You gotta be careful about those breakfast meetings.
You do, don't you? Yeah. No more breakfast meetings for me. Yeah. Coffee maybe every once in a while. But I had a thesis when Tara and I started coming down here more and more in 2019. We bought a house here in Nashville, knowing that something was going to happen cannabis wise. Had our first real liquidity event in the cannabis space, which allowed us to buy a home here, a second home. And also just lifestyle wise, we were at that point where we can move around a little bit more.
Empty nesters.
Nesters. And so I had a thesis coming down to Nashville to meet more and more people wanting to do business, that that I can take my cannabis experience, expertise, relationships, marry them with entertainers and do brand deals, and go get in the middle of some cool brand opportunities. And so we started taking meetings down here. I would meet with some real estate folks as well and all that kind of stuff. And at a breakfast meeting, just fell into a real estate deal, just by chance, not looking for it, with an agent at CAA. The topic was not related to that, but she said, "Hey, this thing just came across my desk, and I know you have real estate experience and interest. You may want to take a look at it." She gave me the address of it, and I looked at it on my phone. I was like, "Oh," I'm like,
It's a pretty good address.
like let's go,
Yeah.
And so in about 2 weeks, I had it under contract, but couldn't travel in 2020 at all. And so I started to take meetings here in town, man. Tara and I came to town really not knowing anybody, even though we had been here a bunch. I probably had maybe 10 people from my business dealings over the years here in town that I kind of knew. So it started off with that. And we would take meetings, man, 5 days a week. I'd load it up just like old days, 5, 6, 7 meetings a day, breakfast, lunch, dinner meetings, happy hours. And then one thing led to another. And, we created this family office environment
And that's Big Plan Holdings.
Big Plan Holdings, yeah, that's here in town. And we've just, we put the pedal to the metal, man.
And so that's your family office?
Family office, yeah.
And so your wife, daughters, they all work there?
They do, yeah. Sydney, our oldest daughter, graduated. Both girls went to the University of Kentucky. Both are graduates from UK. Sydney graduated in 2021. She had a job in Chicago all lined up, locked and loaded, and then that was taken away because of the time. And so that lined up pretty nicely with, the event that took place with our exit. And I had coffee with her in Lexington one day when we were visiting. And I said, "Hey, honey," I'm like, "why don't you, at least for the moment," she's crazy, wicked smart. Both girls are crazy, crazy smart, and super self-motivated and driven. And yeah, they're absolutely phenomenal human beings. But she was a double business major, dual degree at the college, through the College of Business at UK. And I said, "Why don't you come work with me?" I'm like, "I'm not really sure where, this is going to take your mom and I and what we're going to do." But I said, "I promise you one thing. I will give you your master's and your PhD in business. You'll be in rooms with people at your age that you couldn't get into rooms with, and you'll be looking at deals, and you'll be dealing with lawyers and financial advisors and insurance folks and all that kind of stuff." So yeah, so Big Plan Holdings is a collection of Tara, Sydney, Sophie, and myself, and now a full team.
And what do you guys primarily focus on investing in?
We have it's evolved over the last 5 years, call it now at this point. We're in commercial real estate, good old traditional commercial real estate.
Boring.
Yeah, right, man. Go back to the basics.
That's right.
Know what I know best.
Blocking and tackling.
Blocking and tackling, man. We're in commercial real estate. We are in cannabis again, but extraordinarily selective, because most deals are really bad. Most opportunities are really, really tough. Very selective. So commercial real estate, cannabis, music and entertainment, hospitality, professional sports, fashion, and then we have a philanthropic family foundation.
That's a lot. One of the things that caught my attention was like, I think you just BPH, like Big Plan Holdings, like hospitality, and and so you got into, if you've been to Nashville recently, it's there's the Jon Bon Jovi bar, and I think you also did something with Hank Williams Jr.
Right.
So do you put together the real estate, then you approach a singer and say, "Hey, we want to do this"? Is it in reverse? Like how do those deals come together?
Yeah. You have to control the space first. Well, you don't have to control the space, but you should have the space, that may be of interest to them. And so JBJ's Nashville, we opened in June of this year, of 2024. That was a parking lot in downtown Nashville that we bought, small little parking lot that was 0.16 acres, set the price per square foot record, for downtown Nashville at the time. So,
and they were probably like, "Look at this dumbass from Chicago,
this dumbass Chicago guy coming to town."
The market.
Right.
But no, I remember the sale.
Yeah.
I remember like, "Oh,
it's pretty frothy
tight
sale.
price." Now, I've been in real estate long enough to know that high street, like true high street retail, I really mean this. Like, you can't really put a price on it until someone buys something and then you're like, okay, well, there's the price, because like,
Right.
how do you quantify something that truly has effectively no comparable?
Yeah. Yeah. I completely agree with you.
And rent, especially in retail, rent is exponential, right? And so literally, like, the closer you get almost door to door to the best spot, the rent will go exponentially, which in rent drives, rent is driven by sales per square foot. Sales per square foot is driven by location.
Sure.
And so like literally a bar, to the layman, they're like, well, that bar and that bar, they're 30 feet away. You're like, well, they're totally different.
Totally different.
Like that one's on this side of the street.
Absolutely.
That one has parking. That one has a fourth floor double rooftop bar. That one only has one.
Yeah.
And so it's hard.
It's very difficult.
But I've seen the building go up and it's going well.
Yeah, man. Yeah. Thank you. And to answer your question, yeah, we found the locations, and then, probably my closest personal friend here in town is a big manager of, musicians and entertainers, has been doing it forever and ever. And he used to manage Jon, manages Hank still to this day, for the last 20 years. And yeah, went and put a couple deals together. And
I need to be friends with that guy. Get me some cheaper Taylor Swift tickets.
There
Those
you go,
things were
man.
expensive.
How about it? Yeah. Good luck with that.
Yeah. All right. So, you obviously, property management law, but like commercial real estate, then the cannabis, now, amongst many things, kind of this experiential entertainment / hospitality. Like you've done a lot, and it seems like you've found success in each stage. What comes next, or what does the future look like for you?
Great question. I think we're at a point right now where I don't want to say we hit the pause button. I'd like to still do, 1 to 2, 3 deals a year. But we are at a point right now where there are going to be no more verticals. We have one more that hopefully we'll announce in the next 2 weeks or so. But everything we're doing today, Kyle, that we put together, it sounds a little bit chaotic. However, there's a lot of intersection between sexy hospitality, professional sports and professional athletes, high-end musicians and entertainers, cannabis, and fashion.
Yeah.
There's a lot of crossover between all of those. And then this next thing that we're about to, get involved with and become a partner in the next couple of weeks, also kind of bleeds into that. So I think that will probably be the last piece of it. And then we're just going to kind of let things settle in a little bit. We have this hospitality vertical we fired up that you've referenced here. We have about 300 employees all of a sudden in these 3 places. So that's a real business on its own, between the 3 units. We have 2 downtown on Lower Broadway. We have 1 in the 12 South neighborhood here. I may do 1 or 2 more. I'm looking at 1 right now that we might lean into to add on and do a little bolt on here in town, which could be pretty cool and unique. They came across my desk a couple weeks ago with a buddy. But we're going to just take it easy right now.
Settle?
Yeah, we have to let it settle a little bit.
You can grow the ponytail back out?
Yeah, well, I'm bald, so
yeah,
I don't think it's going to happen.
Yeah, no, you got to be like the dude who's bald with the
with the ponytail. Maybe
that's how you know you're rich. Like when a guy shows up with a ponytail who's bald, you're like, he doesn't give a F. Like he's got money, or he's totally oblivious to how he looks.
Right, there you go.
You should do that. Just like roll.
I'll try, man.
No, because you roll in like that, everybody's like, that's the boss.
Yeah, right.
That's the boss.
Right.
Like you become that mob guy that you used to have to send 5-day notices.
There you go. I like it.
Life
I like the recall.
Full circle.
Comes full circle.
Looking back, on a serious tip, how would you describe your mindset in terms of your approach in life? And it seems like there were 2 different phases here, but really talking about kind of after that switch was flipped, when, you had your first daughter, like what was the mindset?
Fear of failure. I mentioned that a little while back, has always been a main driver for my motivation to achieve. And success can be defined in so many different ways, as we all know, right? You're successful financially, you're successful as a parent, and how your kids are and your legacy and how you give back to the community and the world and all that stuff. But I look at all of those things, and I'm pretty proud at this point in terms of how, first and foremost, how our girls have been raised, and as young women, how they are. Hopefully you'll meet them one day and you'll be like, dude, like they're phenomenal.
They want to come here and rip some cold calls.
Right,
They're always
right, man.
welcome,
How about it? Yeah. So it's I think from a legacy standpoint and a parent standpoint, I look back on that and, that's, I don't want to say it's cemented already, but I think so. I see both their paths at this point. The financial achievement has been very fortunate, but but that has come with a lot of hard work. And again, that fear of failure has always been like a real little bird sitting on my shoulder, man, that's been the motivating force behind it. And I think also my upbringing and where I came from, surrounded by where I came from, there's a lot of wealth, and always has been a lot of wealth. And we were certainly not on the poor side by any stretch, but we certainly were not on the wealthy side. Yeah. So I think that chip, if I had to do some real introspection, that is, a lot of where that chip came from. I would see a lot of my buddies or, colleagues kind of like just things were given to them.
I always say, be aware of the poorest kid in the richest neighborhood.
Without question.
Because like on average, society would be like, oh, but look, he has means. And certainly he does. But if that's all and you're in the wealthiest neighborhood, because your parents do very well, but you don't know that, like the broader context. All you know is you're the only kid at school who doesn't get this or doesn't have access to that.
Right. And my wife came up even in a situation, a lot tougher than mine. So, that's also been a driving force, for forever and ever.
What advice would you have for young professionals who are entering the workforce or still early in their career and they want to experience this success relative to you had respective to their industries? Like looking back on your career, what are the lessons that you would, if you were sitting down with them each individually, like here's what my experience has taught me, like here's what you have to do?
Nothing replaces work ethic, in my opinion, at all. Get up every day and put a smile on your face. In the darkest of dark days, when it's hard and you're getting your teeth kicked in, and your clients are yelling at you and you're striking out, or the economy's going against you. So nothing replaces work ethic. And if you have an entrepreneurial spirit about you, bet on yourself. Don't be scared to do that, and be a good person. Your reputation is so absolutely 100%. It sounds corny and cliche, but your reputation is so critical to, at least in my opinion, for having a successful career, or just having a successful life in general, that, if you call a couple of buddies, mutual buddies that you and I have in the commercial real estate industry.
We have mutual friends?
We do.
I didn't even know I had friends.
we
this
have,
is news.
I'm sure we have a couple.
Sweet.
And,
Hell yeah.
and they would ask, I would want you to ask them about me. And I would love that feedback to be obviously very good. That's so important to me.
I'm going to ask you offline what they said about me.
Yeah, right.
That's right.
And
I keep receipts.
You do keep receipts, huh? You're one of those guys.
Oh,
I like
yeah.
it. Yeah, good. I
Yeah.
can never find receipts, but that's what I would say. Hard work, bet on yourself, be a good person. And I think growing your contacts as you
Networking.
at working is so critical. And again, this sounds silly, but I learned this from Drogas and John May, who's one of my former mentors as well, in Mid-America, that when you meet someone who you think you might come across down the road, you put them into your Outlook or whatever CRM you use, and you type in a couple or a few notes on the personal level. So when you come across them 6 months, 2 years down the road, hey, I know Kyle is from here. I know he's married. I know he has 4 kids.
There's a little hack for you.
I know he's got 4 siblings. One lives in Ohio. One lives here. He's got a sister out in Los Angeles. So
yeah, you gotta be careful what you Google. You've had a lot of employees in different businesses. What do you, in your humble opinion, on average, what do you see as the biggest mistake people make to them advancing?
I think, well, I see a lot in this hospitality situation we're in right now. I look at that and I look at the time of where we're at in the world today or our country today. And I can't believe, Tara and I just had this conversation this weekend. Like, I cannot believe how people don't take work seriously.
Oh, man.
I mean, to me, it is staggering that somebody can just on a dime just quit or just decide that they're not showing up for work and it's okay. If we did
Without any pride of ownership, without any pride of brand.
Zero accountability.
Yeah, accountability.
Like almost no accountability. So yeah, man.
Well, when they're getting that couple million from their boomer parents.
Right.
It's like, you know.
Yeah. So it's, that's really, really tough to see right now. Hoping we can break that down a little bit. And I think that being a leader of an organization it is so important to look at other leaders. For me, at least, it's been so important for me to learn from other leaders that I've worked with and for in the past and see what works and what doesn't. Adopt my own leadership style, to know that what has motivated me from my former leaders and mentors in life and in business, and and then figure out how to be a good psychologist along the way.
Yeah.
And really, you're right, because when you have employees, it's
people.
It's people. It comes down to people. It comes down to psychology. It comes down to putting the right people in place where they can be successful. And
especially if you're not making something like something physical, it's
Right.
like you're just in the people business.
You're in the people
which is like
business.
sales to a
Yeah.
degree.
Absolutely.
Last question for you: what was there? Was there a course? Was there a book? Was there something like an actual, I would say, resource, but something that you could direct people towards that might help them either look at things differently or skill sets improve?
Mine has all been
Experience?
Yeah, it's been all experience, man. Yeah, I haven't read one book that really the light switch went on and something.
You didn't go to
triggered.
How to Win Friends and Influence People?
I have not. You
don't need it.
It's all been life experience, man, and just really kind of digging in and figuring out what works, what doesn't for myself. And again, it sounds cliche and corny, but being a good person, man, to me is so critical. And being a good leader and wanting people to, work with you and not for you, but work with you and work as a team. And, I look a lot at, I'm a big sports fan. So I do look at a lot of successful coaches, whether they be in the NFL, the NBA, Major League Baseball, and what that looks like. How do you build an organization? How do you, if you're a team owner, how do you build that from, top down? So I do a lot of that kind of stuff, but yeah, man.
Well, you figured out a lot in terms of how to find success, self-taught. But no, I love that answer too, because, some people will come in and it's like, oh, I read this book.
How
or I
about
went
you?
to this course. Nah, self-taught. dog.
Self-taught?
Yeah.
Yeah. No
But-
book, no podcast, no book.
No.
Yeah.
I read all the time. And
Mhm.
so look, to say you're self-taught, for both of us, I mean, like we obviously learn somewhere. I read all the time. I do listen to podcasts when I can,
Mhm.
but I really, unfortunately for me, I really am a very good learner through failure.
Mhm.
And so almost everything I know, I had to fail at it first. And because I'm a slow learner, I'd say I fail a lot,
Mhm.
multiple times, but eventually I do learn.
Mhm.
And so whether it was, cold calling or pitching my value of representation as an agent, or, luckily I haven't failed in investing, but like, it's just failing and then just saying, well, that sucked.
Mhm.
How do I not have that happen again? And then just say, oh, okay, I think I understand, what I should have said or what I shouldn't have said. And
Sure.
just experience,
Yeah. Experience.
and guess, to your point, I'll kind of put a bow on this conversation. The best way to get more experience is to work harder
Yeah.
and work longer, because if you work longer and work harder, you're going to have more at bats,
question.
whatever your profession is,
Mhm.
which is going to give you more opportunities to fail, which
Yeah.
will give you more opportunities to learn.
Without
And
question.
then over time, I notice, and let me know if you agree, that your failure rate goes down, your success rate goes up. And then people go, how do you know all this? It's like, because I messed everything up. And
Absolutely.
every time I just wanted to plug that hole.
Yeah.
And then one day, it's not that there'll never be any holes in your game. You always miss shots, no matter how good you are, but there aren't a lot.
Mhm.
And so
I
that's,
completely agree, man. There's a quote that I will certainly chop, so I will not even attempt, but I'm a big Michael Jordan fan coming from Chicago. So I was there through the heyday.
yeah.
So I do read a bunch of Jordan quotes. That I do. And, just there are so many things that he has said over the years about how he was so successful on the court,
Mhm.
that discipline, that mental approach to it, and just and the failure to what you talked about. I mean, you can't hit every shot. You're going to take a game winner and you're going to lose. You're going to miss it, time and time again. But the more you take, the more you're going to make. And if you get to that point. So yeah, man, I completely agree.
MJ is the greatest. And I think he said, I've missed more game winners than I've made. And the great one, Wayne Gretzky, also said, you miss all the shots you don't take. So
there you go.
Take shots, take a lot of them, fail.
Absolutely.
And, well, you've certainly made a lot of shots. Congratulations. This
Thank
was
you,
fun.
Kyle. Appreciate it.
I look forward to hanging. I'm going to take the whole Nashville crew down to the Jon Bon Jovi bar this Friday. I'm going to run up a big tab and I'm going to tell them, I'm Josh's boy. I'm friends with the owner. And hopefully they don't charge me. But
there
Josh,
you go.
I appreciate you.
That's it. I appreciate you as well,
Thanks
man.
for coming
Thank
on.
you so much. Really